The Tanya portion for today, the 10th day of Adar, is in Perek Lamed Beis of Tanya, where the Rebbe is going to explain the Gemara that says that there are those Jews whom we are obligated and commanded to hate. And there seems to be a contradiction to what we were saying before, that every Jew is included in the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael. And here we're saying that there are some Jews that we're supposed to hate. So there's two lines from the bottom on page Mem Aleph, or 146. Or Mashakosov Begimara, and this that it says in the Gemara, Shemi Shereye Bechavei Shechota Mitzvah Lesanesei, that if one sees his friend sinning, he has a mitzvah to hate him. The Gamleim al Rabish Yisanehu, and also he's obligated to tell his teacher, their teacher, that he should also hate him. So how does this fit with the statement that every Jew is included in this unconditional love that we have to have for every Jew? So the answer is, Hainu, this statement about hating another Jew who is sinning, Hainu b'chavere b'teiro mitzvahs, it is only a person who is your chaver, who is your friend, meaning to say that he is your equal in Torah and mitzvahs. He has studied as much as you, he does as much as you, and yet you see him doing a sin. And then, he has already fulfilled also the mitzvah of rebuking and giving musar to his friend, and he's fulfilled the mitzvah properly, which means that he's done it 100 times, or until his friend has gotten so upset with him that he hit him. And so he's fulfilled the mitzvah of rebuking your friend. And amisecha means im she'itcha b'teiro mitzvahs. Whom do you rebuke? Only someone who is your equal in Torah and mitzvahs. So he's done that as well. The af al pikein loishav mechat mechatoi. And in spite of all of this, your friend does not desist from the sin. He has not done tshuva. As he says in the Sefer Charedim, that this applies only to a friend, because if you don't hate your friend for his sins, you could learn from him and be influenced by him. But if it's not your friend, it's not someone you're close to, then you don't have to hate him even for his sins. But one who is not your friend, and you're not close to him, concerning this kind of a relationship, Hillel Hazaken said, that we should be as the disciples of Aaron, to learn from him that he was he loved peace, and he loved God's creations. And he brought them closer to Torah. Leimar, what does this tell us? That even one who is very far from Torah and from Avodah, and that's why the Mishnah describes them as briyes, as creatures, creations, because it is the only title that applies to them. Even so, you have to draw them close with heavy cords, thick ropes of love. And hopefully with all of this effort, you'll be able to bring them closer to Torah and to the Eibishter. So instead of being commanded to hate this person, even though he is so far from God and so sinful, that the only thing that can be said about him is that he is one of God's creations, that he is a creature, part of God's creation. Instead of hating him, we have to draw him close with love, heavy cords of love, and hopefully bring him closer also to his Yiddishkeit. And if not, if we do not succeed in bringing him closer to Yiddishkeit, so even if not, lo hifsid, we've lost nothing, because there is schar mitzvahs avas reim, because the love between Jews itself is a mitzvah, even if it doesn't lead to other mitzvahs, to more mitzvahs. So, first of all, the statement that you have to love, that you have to hate a Jew who sins, applies only to a friend of yours. And then you hate him not because you hate him, but because you can't, you have to separate yourself and distance yourself from him so that you not be affected. And this is only after you've already rebuked your friend properly and thoroughly, and it hasn't helped. But someone who is not your friend, and you're not close to, and he's not your equal in Torah and mitzvahs, and you haven't, and therefore you are not obligated to rebuke him, you're certainly not obligated to hate him either. On the contrary, you have to love him and bring him closer to Torah. And if not, if you don't bring him closer to Torah, so you have the mitzvah of loving a fellow Jew. But what's more is that even those with whom you are close, a friend, whom you are obligated to rebuke if you see that he is sinning, and you've rebuked them, and they still do not desist from their sin, they don't do tshuva, concerning whom we are told that in that case there is a mitzvah to hate them, mitzvah le'eyavam gamkein. It is a mitzvah to love them as well. In other words, when we are told in those rare circumstances that we have to hate a Jew, that does not release us from the obligation to love him as well. So in fact, the Jew who is sinning, who is our friend, who has been rebuked, who does not desist from the sin, involves us. And we are obligated to that Jew more so than to the Jew who doesn't sin. Because with the Jew who doesn't sin, who isn't our friend, who isn't close to us, who isn't our equal in Torah, whom we haven't yet rebuked and so on, we have only the mitzvah to love him unconditionally. But the Jew who is our friend and whom we rebuked and does not stop sinning, we are commanded to hate him, so to him we have two obligations. We're commanded to hate him and we're commanded to love him as well. And both the love and the hate are both real and true. They're both genuine, they're not pretend feelings, both the love and the hate, and they can both exist at the same time, because sin is mitzad hara shabohem. The hatred is because of the evil within them. And the love is for the good that is hidden within them. And from this it's apparent that this applies only to one who is your friend and who is your equal in Torah. Then you have to hate the evil in him while you also love the good in him. But someone who is not your equal in Torah, who hasn't learned Torah, who doesn't know Torah, here even the evil in them does not call for hatred as it does in the friend. So there's the hatred for the evil within them, and there is the love for the good that is hidden within them. Shehu nitzutz elikusha b'teichom, which is the divine spark within them, hamachayin nafshom ha'alikis, that gives life to their godly soul. And this exists, as he said earlier in Tanya, even in a Rasha Gomer. So it's not enough that he has both love and hate, that he hates the bad and he loves the good, and they remain equal, but it's really not equal at all. Because in fact, the hate is also because of love. The hating him is for his benefit, so that as in general, as an overall motivation behind the hate, we find that there is love there as well. So it's not a perfect balance of hate and love. But what's more is that he also has to be me'eir rachamim b'libei aleho. He has to arouse compassion in his heart for the neshama that exists within this sinful person, ki hi bebechinas golus beteichara mesitra achra hagever ale haberishayim, because the neshama is in exile within the evil that comes from the klipa that is now overwhelming this person and causing him to sin. V'harachmonos, and this compassion, this pity that we feel, mevateles hasina, removes the hatred, destroys the hatred, umeireres ha'ava, and it arouses the love. Keneda, as we know, mimashakosuv, from that which is written, liyankev ashapodes Avraham, it says that Yaakov redeems Avraham, and the meaning in a spiritual sense is that Yaakov, which is the attribute of compassion, of Rachmanus, and Avraham, who is the attribute of Ava, of Chesed, there are times when the love that we have for God is overwhelmed and darkened by the klippa that buries and hides the love and doesn't let it function, so that the love is in exile, is in Golus, imprisoned. And Yaakov Ashapodas Avraham, so Yaakov comes along and redeems Avraham, which means that compassion, when we arouse compassion in a place where we should have love but we don't, if we arouse a feeling of compassion, the compassion redeems the love and replaces it, brings it back into its proper place. It's interesting that this subject of Avas Yisrael appears in Tanya in Perek Lamed Beis, spelling the word Lev, the heart. And the Rebbe Zol Gesundsein explains that every mitzvah has its place in the body, and that limb, that part of the body, depends on that mitzvah for its well-being. And therefore, the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael is in the heart, love is in the heart, and because it is that way in the Jew, therefore it is also that way in Torah. So that in Torah, meaning in the Tanya, Avas Yisrael appears in the heart of Tanya, in the lev of the Tanya. And although there are many mitzvahs that depend on the heart, that are in the heart, yet the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael is greater than all of them, including also the mitzvah of loving God, which is certainly also in the heart. Yet, Alter Rebbe says that the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael is greater than the mitzvah of Avas Hashem. Therefore, the entire existence of the heart and the well-being of the heart depends on the Avas Yisrael. In fact, it says later on in Tanya that through Avas Yisrael, that a Jew feels in his heart, since the Jews and Torah and God are all one. So when a Jew in his heart fulfills what it says in Tanya, in the heart of Tanya, which is the heart of Torah, this makes God's heart, so to speak, healthy and complete. And what we can learn from that is that the Avas Yisrael that one Jew has for another, based on the teachings of Chassidus, the teachings of Tanya, makes the heart of the Rebbe whole and complete. And David HaMelech did not say, Tachlis sinos senesim, I hate them with an utter hate, which implies that there is only hate and no love. He said this only, Elo al haminim v'hapikarsim, only for those heretics and atheists, she'ein lehem chelik belikei Yisrael, who have forfeited completely their portion in God, or their connection to God, Kediyisa b'Gemara Reish Perek Tazai in the Shabbos. And here the Rebbe says that the Alter Rebbe wants to answer the question as to why David HaMelech hated them with a complete and consummate hatred, and left no room for love as well. But this is not a lesson, and this is not an instruction for the average person that he also has to find someone, or the heretic or the atheist, whom he hates completely without any love. This is true only of David HaMelech, because he was the king, and therefore it is his job and his obligation to judge and to pass judgment. Therefore he had to do this. But for other people who are not the king, even though we see in another person such faults where we can't find any good, any redeeming good to them at all, but it is possible that even so, the atheism and the heresy could, on the inside, not be as bad as it appears on the outside. And this only God can judge. And as we find with the story in the Chumash, where the Mekoshish ate him, that there was a guy who was collecting wood on Shabbos, and he was put to death, and the Gemara says that he meant l'shem shamayim, that he really intended to show the world, or to show his fellow Jews, how serious Shabbos is, that for gathering wood on Shabbos you get killed. But in fact, not only did he have a good intention, which of course we could not know, but in fact, it wasn't a sin at all. Because if you're doing an Aveda, a Malacha, on Shabbos, which you don't really need for its own sake, then it's not a Malacha at all according to the Torah. So he wasn't really gathering wood at all. He didn't need the wood. He wasn't interested in the wood. He was interested in the laws of Shabbos. So that what he was doing was merely a waste of time. It wasn't a halach. It wasn't a malacha according to the halacha at all. Of course, only God would know this. We could not. And this is the Chiddush, the great Avas Yisrael that we see in the Tanya, in Seif Perek Yud Tes, where the Rebbe says that even an Amoritz, even a simple Jew, an unlearned Jew, because of the emunah that he has in his heart and his connection to God, he refuses to bow down to an idol, even though he doesn't believe in the idol at all. Which means that even if it wasn't actually a sin at all, that even in such a circumstance, where what he's afraid of is not the commission of a sin, because there is no sin here, and yet he refuses to bow, even at the point of losing his life, because of his connection to the Eibishter. So we see that even that which appears to be a sin could be not only well-intentioned, it could in fact turn out not to be a sin at all. In the Hayom Yom of the 10th of Adar, of Adar Sheni, the Rebbe writes that Terem HaNesiya Mimokim Medurei, before he goes off on a trip from the place in which he lives, Yisader Achsidishen Fabrengen, he should organize Achsidishen Fabrengen, and he should get the blessings for the trip from his good friends. And as the famous saying goes, Chasidim zegenen sich nicht. Chasidim never say goodbye. Weil man fort sich kemal nicht voneinander, because Chasidim never really leave each other. Wo me is men ein mishpacha. Wherever we are one family. And that's in connection to the Tanya that we're learning in Perek Lamed Beis, that even when we do separate, even when we go our separate ways, one goes higher, one goes lower, God forbid, but even so, we overlook that, and we continue to be one family.